The series Blackface, while I was doing that, I ended up getting a residency at a place in Detroit called the Red Bull House of Art. And it's an artist residency where they give you a pretty hefty stipend for supplies, and they give you studio space. They feed you, they give you any resources that you need to create a body of work over the course of 4 months. And at the end of 4 months, you have a show, an exhibition. And so at the time I was doing it, there were 8 artists, and so I was one of 8. And coming off of, this was still while I was doing the portraits at the time, but for this particular residency, I wanted to do a body of work which talked about identity but didn't show faces. They weren't formal portraitures, because one of the challenges with portraits are sometimes it can be challenging for viewers to ever get past just wanting to know who the subject is, whether the portrait is a metaphor for something larger or not. And so during this particular exhibition, for this body of work, I was looking at a lot of Baroque art influenced by like Caravaggio and Ribera, and thinking about how they would even have portraits then, but we were never concerned with who this was as a character. I would just look at it and say, oh, this is David and Goliath, and I would know that. And who the model wasn't as important as the metaphor for what the picture was. And so additionally, thinking about where I was in Detroit and thinking about the importance of protecting oneself from like toxic environments. And so I use the mask as a trope for that, sort of like one's protecting themselves from toxic people, toxic environments, toxic sort of situations. And once you put this mask on, not only does it look like something that's protecting you from the environment, but it's almost like a type of armor where it makes the wearer look somewhat insidious and not to be approached in that way. So this is my nephew again. So you can see he's a little older now, like in this one. And once again, he got really serious, put on a gas mask and decided to pose for me in this way. But he's becoming, this is called Precipice. There's Precipice 1 and this is Precipice 2. So thinking about like his youth and even wanting to protect that, like protect yourself, like starting at an early age and like preparing people for that type of mindset. These were the first 2 things I did there at Red Bull. This is called Harbinger 1 and 2. And I posed for these. And once again, like same thing, protecting oneself from toxic environments. Because I was going through it with some of the relationships I had in my life. And once again, always thinking about the decisions that I make. And so every day is another day to get it right. And so I use those, like I put it in my art to work through this so that it can become a catharsis. And then I act accordingly, like once, like I've reached that catharsis. These were drawings from that same series. So for the series, I wanted to be somewhat warlike, but I didn't want to use real guns or things that looked exactly like real guns. And so there was an artist there at the residency named Kevin Skinner who creates these he out of found objects. He'll create these, they look like 1950s ray guns like you would see in movies and things like that, but they would look so convincing, and he'd create them out of found objects. And so I asked him if I could use his guns as props for my paintings, because while I wanted it to come off as sort of like a series which was talking about going through a sort of like metaphysical war, I didn't really want to use guns in and of itself, and especially considering the relationships of guns to young black men at that time. That just wasn't something I really wanted to put out there. And so all these were pencil drawings, just graphite on paper, I think all like 11 by 14, I believe. And then that was the last painting in the series. This was called Apotheosis, and this was, I think, 7 by 8 feet. So to that point, this had been the largest painting I had done. And this one is still in my basement, I think. I don't know where it is now. But when I painted this, I completely painted it. I'm the model for it, but then I had the whole portrait in there, and I looked at all of my body of work, and I said, no, you said you weren't going to do a portrait. Like I was really upset at myself. And so I sort of like put all of the features in the shadows to get rid of like the overt portrait, so that it's just about the idea, like the idea of apotheosis, moving from one state to a different state, like a spiritual state. And I sort of felt that's where I was at that point in my life, working through this residency and moving from somebody who couldn't see life past corporate America into becoming a full-time creative. And so that's sort of what this painting is about. Like I'm just weary and I'm done with it, like in that way.